She said my mind was beige wallpaper in a neon world. So I took that beige idea and sold it to her loudest rival. Now, every time she opens her laptop, she's forced to use the workflow she called boring. And her career? I buried it under the click of a single, silent update. My name is Clara Bennett, and this is the story of how I turned my greatest professional humiliation into the sweetest revenge imaginable. For 8 months, I'd poured my soul into what I believed would be my masterpiece. Not the flashy, attention-grabbing kind that wins awards at tech conferences, but the quiet, methodical kind that actually works. The kind that saves companies millions and makes users' lives genuinely easier. I was a UX strategist at Cortex Labs, a mid-tier tech company that prided itself on being an innovation incubator while secretly being terrified of any real change. The irony wasn't lost on me. Cortex Labs talked a big game about disruption and revolutionary thinking, but their idea of innovation was adding more bells and whistles to already bloated interfaces. They confused complexity with sophistication, noise with progress. I had learned this the hard way over my 3 years there, watching brilliant ideas die slow deaths in committee meetings where form always triumphed over function. But this project was different. This was my chance to prove that sometimes the most radical innovation is elegant simplicity. I had spent countless nights in the office, the building empty except for the hum of servers and the occasional security guard making rounds. My desk became a war room of sticky notes, user journey maps, and behavioral analytics printouts. I interviewed dozens of customers, analyzed thousands of support tickets, and identified the exact moments where users abandoned our platform in frustration. The solution was beautiful in its simplicity. A streamlined workflow that eliminated 17 unnecessary steps from our core user process. No flashy animations, no trendy micro-interactions, just pure, efficient functionality that would reduce customer churn by an estimated 35% according to my models. Amanda Kruger, my direct supervisor and creative director, had been watching my progress with what I initially mistook for supportive interest. Amanda was everything Cortex Labs valued: loud, confident, and blessed with an uncanny ability to make mundane ideas sound revolutionary. She had the kind of presence that dominated rooms, the kind of voice that carried across open office spaces with theatrical precision. "How's our little efficiency expert doing?" she would ask, stopping by my desk with her signature coffee cup, a massive ceramic monstrosity emblazoned with "Disrupt Everything" in bold letters. Her smile always seemed just a little too wide, her interest just a little too performative. I should have recognized the warning signs. The way she never actually looked at my work when I showed it to her. The way she nodded enthusiastically while her eyes remained completely cold. The way she redirected every conversation away from the technical details and toward the vision and impact. But I was naive. I believed that good work spoke for itself. I believed that results mattered more than presentation. I believed that Amanda, despite her theatrical nature, ultimately wanted what was best for the company. The presentation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in Conference Room A, the glass-walled fishbowl where careers were made and destroyed under the fluorescent lights and everyone's watchful eyes. I had prepared for weeks, crafting a demonstration that would showcase not just the workflow improvements, but the concrete business impact, increased user retention, reduced support costs, higher conversion rates. I arrived early, setting up my laptop and triple-checking my slides. The mock-ups looked crisp on the large display, the data visualizations clear and compelling. I had even prepared for every possible question, armed with supplementary slides that dove deeper into user research methodology and technical implementation details. Amanda arrived 15 minutes before the meeting, bringing with her the intoxicating energy that made her so effective in these environments. She was dressed in one of her power suits, sharp-shouldered and commanding, with her auburn hair pulled back in a way that meant business. "Ready to change the world?" she asked, but something in her tone made my stomach tighten. The senior leadership team filed in. Marcus Webb, our CEO, a man who spoke entirely in buzzwords and business cliches. Sarah Kim, head of product, whose laptop was covered in stickers from every major tech conference, and David Chen, VP of Engineering, who had the perpetually exhausted look of someone trying to implement too many half-baked ideas. I began my presentation with confidence, walking them through the current user journey and highlighting the pain points I had identified. The room was attentive, heads nodding at the right moments. Marcus even leaned forward when I showed the projected impact on our key metrics. Then I reached the core of my presentation, the new workflow itself. It was elegant, clean. Every element served a purpose, every step eliminated friction. Users could complete their primary tasks 60% faster, with 40% fewer clicks. And the learning curve was virtually non-existent because it followed intuitive patterns they already understood from other applications. I watched the room carefully as I demonstrated the prototype. Marcus was taking notes. Sarah was leaning in, studying the interface design. David was nodding slowly, already thinking through implementation challenges. But Amanda was silent, completely, unnaturally silent. I finished my presentation and opened the floor for questions. Marcus spoke first, asking about rollout timelines. Sarah wanted to know about A/B testing strategies. David inquired about technical requirements and integration challenges. I answered each question thoroughly, confidently. The mood in the room was positive, engaged. This was going well. Then Amanda spoke. "This is certainly thorough," she began, her voice carrying that particular tone that makes your blood run cold. She stood up slowly, moving to the front of the room with the practiced grace of someone who knew how to command attention. "But I have to ask, Clara, where's the innovation here? Where's the disruption? Where's the spark that's going to make users fall in love with our platform?" The room shifted. I could feel the energy change, the supportive attention transforming into uncomfortable scrutiny. "Amanda, the innovation is in the efficiency gains," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Users don't need to fall in love with a workflow. They need it to work seamlessly so they can focus on their actual goals." Amanda's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Clara, your approach is very practical, very safe, very..." She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. "Beige." The word hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. "We don't need a filing cabinet, Clara. We need a rocket ship. We don't need beige wallpaper in a neon world. We need minds that think in Technicolor, that push boundaries, that dare to dream bigger than just making things work better." I felt my face flush. Around the table, eyes darted between Amanda and me, waiting to see how I would respond. "But the data shows," I began. "The data shows incremental improvement," Amanda interrupted. "Optimization, fine-tuning, the kind of work that keeps the lights on but doesn't set the world on fire. Clara, we're not here to be marginally better. We're here to be revolutionary." She turned to address the room, effectively dismissing me from the conversation. "What we need is a complete reimagining of the user experience. Something bold, something that makes a statement, something that tells users we're not just another efficiency app. We're the future of how people interact with technology." Marcus was nodding along. Sarah had closed her laptop. David was checking his phone. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that this had nothing to do with the quality of my work or the validity of my approach. This was about Amanda asserting dominance, about ensuring that any innovation within her department bore her signature, her vision, her brand of theatrical disruption. "I think what Clara has shown us today is valuable," Amanda continued, her tone now patronizing. "But it's more of a maintenance project than a breakthrough initiative. Perhaps something our junior developers could implement as a background improvement while we focus on the real innovation work." The meeting ended shortly after that. People filed out with the awkward energy of having witnessed an execution. A few colleagues caught my eye with sympathetic glances, but no one spoke up. No one challenged Amanda's assessment. No one asked to see more of the data I had spent months collecting. I sat alone in the conference room for several minutes after everyone left, staring at my laptop screen where my beige prototype still glowed with quiet efficiency. 8 months of work. Hundreds of hours of user research. a solution that could genuinely improve thousands of people's daily experience with our platform. Reduced to beige wallpaper in a neon world. Over the following weeks, I watched my professional death unfold in slow motion. It wasn't dramatic. There was no formal termination, no HR meetings, no official demotion. Instead, it was death by 1,000 cuts. Being excluded from critical project meetings, watching my access to key systems quietly revoked, seeing my name removed from email chains without explanation. The Slack channels fell silent when I joined conversations. My task assignments mysteriously disappeared from project management boards. Colleagues who had sought my input for months suddenly found excuses to avoid collaboration. Amanda, meanwhile, launched her revolutionary redesign initiative with great fanfare. She brought in external consultants, organized brainstorming sessions with expensive facilitators, and filled whiteboards with vague concepts about emotional user journeys and experiential interfaces. The new direction was exactly what I had expected: visually stunning, technically complex, and utterly impractical. Users would have to navigate through multiple animated transitions to complete simple tasks. The interface prioritized aesthetic appeal over functional clarity. Every interaction was designed to wow rather than to work. But it looked incredible in presentations. Amanda had found her rocket ship, even if it was destined to explode on the launch pad. I began updating my resume and reaching out to my professional network. But my heart wasn't in the job search. I felt defeated, disillusioned with an industry that seemed to value flash over substance, presentation over performance. Then, on a particularly cold Thursday evening in November, as I sat in the nearly empty office clearing out my desk drawers, I found the USB drive. It was small, unremarkable, just a simple black thumb drive that had been sitting in the back of my drawer for months. But as I held it in my palm, I realized what it contained: complete backups of my workflow project. Not just the final presentation, but months of research, detailed technical specifications, user testing results, and fully functional prototype code. Amanda could erase me from the company's official memory, but she couldn't erase the work itself. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket and finished packing my personal items. As I walked through the office toward the exit, past the collaboration spaces where Amanda's consultants had covered every surface with sticky notes about user delight and experiential transformation, I felt something shift inside me. If Cortex Labs didn't want my beige wallpaper, maybe someone else would. The bus ride home took 45 minutes through the city's industrial district, past warehouses and shipping containers, through neighborhoods where function mattered more than form. I sat in the back, laptop balanced on my knees, drafting a LinkedIn message to Liam O'Connor. Liam was the head of product at NextCore, a smaller company that Cortex Labs routinely dismissed as budget-friendly and unsophisticated. While Amanda sneered at their pedestrian approach to user experience, NextCore had been quietly building a reputation for reliable, efficient software that actually solved problems. I had met Liam briefly at a UX conference the previous year. He was the kind of person who asked detailed technical questions instead of pontificating about industry trends. The kind of person who cared more about user outcomes than awards recognition. My message was direct. Hi, Liam. We met at UX Week last year. I've been working on a workflow optimization project that might interest NextCore. Nothing flashy. Just a 35% improvement in user retention with 60% faster task completion. Would you be willing to spend 15 minutes reviewing the approach? If it's not useful, you'll know immediately. If it is useful, it could give NextCore a significant competitive advantage. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Liam's response came within an hour. Can you meet tomorrow morning? There's a cafe called Grind Coffee on 5th Street, 8 a.m. work for you? I spent that night preparing for a conversation I never thought I would have. Not a job interview, not a formal pitch, but something much more dangerous. A transaction that existed in the gray area between professional networking and corporate espionage. Grind Coffee was exactly the kind of place where clandestine meetings happened, dimly lit, filled with freelancers and remote workers. Loud enough that conversations couldn't be overheard, but intimate enough for serious discussions. Liam arrived precisely at 8, carrying a laptop bag and wearing the slightly rumpled uniform of someone who prioritized substance over style. He was younger than I remembered, probably in his early 30s, with the focused intensity of someone who had built his career on delivering results rather than managing perceptions. "Clara," he said, extending his hand. "Thanks for reaching out. Your message was intriguing." We ordered coffee and found a corner table away from the main foot traffic. Liam got straight to the point. "Before we go any further, I need to understand the situation. Are you still employed at Cortex Labs?" "Officially, yes. Practically, no. They've made it clear that my approach doesn't align with their vision." "And this project you mentioned, is it proprietary Cortex Labs intellectual property?" This was the question I had been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. "The research methodology is mine. The user interviews were conducted on my own time with participants I recruited independently. The technical implementation is based on open-source frameworks. The business case analysis draws from publicly available data. Cortex Labs never formally accepted the project, never allocated resources to it, and explicitly rejected the approach as incompatible with their strategy." Liam studied my face carefully. "You're saying this is your independent work?" "I'm saying that Cortex Labs had no interest in this solution and has made that abundantly clear." He nodded slowly. "Show me what you've got." I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into my laptop. Within moments, Liam was looking at 8 months of work, comprehensive user research, detailed technical specifications, a fully functional prototype, and projected business impact analysis. I watched his expression as he clicked through the materials. Unlike the theatrical responses I was used to at Cortex Labs, Liam's engagement was quiet and intense. He asked specific questions about implementation challenges, user testing methodology, and scalability considerations. "This is impressive," he said finally. "Really impressive. The research is thorough, the technical approach is sound, and the projected impact is significant." He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. NextCore has been looking for ways to differentiate ourselves from competitors who prioritize flash over functionality. This kind of workflow optimization could be exactly what we need to capture market share from companies that have lost sight of what actually matters to users. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice calm. "What would that look like?" "Initially, a consulting arrangement. You help us adapt and implement this approach for our platform. If it delivers the results you're projecting, we discuss a more permanent arrangement. And if it helps us win business from your former employer..." He smiled for the first time since we had met. "Well, that would just be good business." We shook hands across the table, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The next phase unfolded with remarkable speed. Liam introduced me to NextCore's small but talented development team as an independent UX consultant. They were hungry for innovative approaches and tired of being dismissed as the budget option in competitive situations. Working with NextCore was like returning to my natural habitat after months in exile. These were people who appreciated methodical research, who understood that the best user experiences were often invisible, who measured success in user satisfaction rather than design awards. We spent 2 weeks adapting my Cortex Labs prototype to NextCore's platform architecture. The core principles remain the same: eliminate friction, reduce cognitive load, optimize for task completion. But the implementation had to be tailored to their existing code base and user base. The team's enthusiasm was infectious. Unlike the performative excitement I was used to at Cortex Labs, this was genuine technical curiosity. They asked detailed questions about user research findings, proposed improvements to the interface logic, and challenged assumptions in constructive ways. Sarah, NextCore's lead developer, summarized the team's sentiment perfectly. "This is the kind of UX work that actually makes sense. It's not trying to solve problems that don't exist or impress people who don't use the software." We launched a limited beta version to a small group of existing NextCore customers without any marketing fanfare. No press releases, no social media campaigns, no industry analyst briefings, just quiet implementation and careful monitoring of user behavior data. The results exceeded even my optimistic projections. Beta users completed core tasks 65% faster than with the previous interface. Support ticket volume decreased by 40%. Most importantly, user retention improved by 42% in the first month alone. But the most satisfying data point was something I hadn't explicitly measured: user comments describing the experience as intuitive, efficient, and exactly what I needed. Beige wallpaper, apparently, was exactly what users wanted. Liam called me into his office after reviewing the beta results. Nextcore occupied a converted warehouse space that prioritized functionality over aesthetics. Open work areas, natural light, and the kind of utilitarian design that Amanda would have called uninspiring. Clara, these numbers are remarkable. More importantly, the user feedback is overwhelmingly positive. People are actually thanking us for making their work easier. He pulled up analytics dashboards on his monitor, showing user engagement patterns that looked like hockey sticks pointing toward success. We want to accelerate the rollout. Full implementation across our entire platform. Targeted launch to new customer prospects, and aggressive positioning against competitors who are struggling with user adoption issues. I knew what he was really saying. Nextcore was preparing to go after Cortex Labs' customers directly. There's something else, Liam continued. We've been approached by Meridian Logistics about switching from their current platform provider. They're frustrated with poor user adoption and high training costs. Sound familiar? Meridian Logistics was one of Cortex Labs' most important customers, a relationship that Amanda frequently highlighted in company meetings as proof of her strategic vision. They want to see a demonstration next week. Would you be available to present the solution? I thought about Amanda's confidence in client relationships she considered unshakable. I thought about her dismissal of Nextcore as unsophisticated and budget-focused. I thought about being called beige wallpaper in a neon world. I'll clear my schedule. The Meridian Logistics presentation took place in their corporate headquarters, a gleaming downtown tower that spoke to the company's scale and ambition. Their team included the CTO, head of operations, and 3 department managers who would be primary users of any platform they selected. Unlike my final presentation at Cortex Labs, this demonstration was focused entirely on practical outcomes. No visionary statements about the future of user interaction. No bold proclamations about revolutionary thinking. Just methodical explanation of how the workflow improvements would impact their daily operations. I walked them through typical user scenarios, showing how employees could complete routine tasks with fewer steps, less training, and reduced error rates. I presented the beta testing data from similar companies, demonstrating measurable improvements in productivity and user satisfaction. The questions they asked were exactly the kinds of questions that Amanda had trained me to consider irrelevant. How long would training take? Could the interface be customized for different user roles? What were the technical requirements for implementation? Practical questions with practical answers. The CTO summed up the room's sentiment. This is exactly what we need. Our current platform looks impressive in presentations, but our employees struggle with it daily. This approach prioritizes usability over aesthetics, which is what matters for business operations. Nextcore won the contract within a week. I learned about Meridian's decision through my network before it was officially announced. A former Cortex Labs colleague, still trapped in Amanda's theatrical ecosystem, sent me a discreet message. Holy shit, Clara. Meridian just canceled their contract. Amanda is losing her mind. The next few months transformed Nextcore from a budget alternative into a serious competitor. Meridian's success story opened doors with other large clients who were quietly frustrated with flashy platforms that prioritize form over function. Each new client victory validated my original thesis. Users didn't want rocket ships or neon wallpaper. They wanted tools that helped them accomplish their goals efficiently and intuitively. Amanda's response was predictable. She doubled down on the revolutionary redesign, bringing in even more expensive consultants and promising even more disruptive innovations. The new Cortex Labs interface became increasingly complex, with animated transitions and experiential elements that delighted design bloggers while frustrating actual users. Industry publications praised Cortex Labs' bold vision and innovative approach. Amanda gave keynote presentations about the future of user experience design. The company won several design awards for their ambitious interface concepts. Meanwhile, their customer churn rate increased by 60%. I watched this unfold from my new office at NextCore, where Liam had offered me a permanent position as principal UX strategist. The title was less important than the mandate: continue building solutions that prioritize user outcomes over industry recognition. My desk overlooked the warehouse floor where NextCore's development team worked in productive collaboration. No glass conference rooms for performative meetings. No open spaces designed for theatrical presentations. Just people solving problems with methodical precision. The irony was perfect. Amanda had achieved her vision of revolutionary disruption. She had disrupted her own company's market position by prioritizing innovation theater over user value. The final act played out at the annual UX Strategy Conference, the industry's most prestigious gathering of user experience professionals. I had been invited to present a case study on practical innovation in enterprise software, a topic that would have been considered boring just 2 years earlier. My presentation was scheduled for the main stage, the same venue where Amanda had delivered her keynote address the previous year about transcending traditional UX paradigms. I arrived at the conference center early, reviewing my slides in the green room. The presentation was structured around the Meridian logistics transformation, concrete metrics, user feedback, and business impact. Nothing flashy, just documented results. As I walked toward the stage, I noticed Amanda in the audience. She was sitting in the middle section, wearing one of her signature power suits, surrounded by Cortex Labs colleagues. Her expression was unreadable, but her posture was tense. The presentation went exactly as I had hoped. The audience, seasoned UX professionals who had grown tired of theoretical innovation, responded enthusiastically to methodical problem-solving and measurable outcomes. During the Q&A, someone asked about the challenge of selling practical solutions in an industry obsessed with breakthrough innovation. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is solve problems that actually exist. I replied, users don't care if your solution wins design awards. They care if it helps them accomplish their goals without friction or confusion. The audience laughed, recognizing the implicit critique of industry trends. Innovation isn't always about adding complexity. Sometimes it's about removing it. Sometimes the most disruptive thing you can do is make something work better rather than look better. I could see Amanda shifting uncomfortably in her seat. After the presentation, during the networking reception, several industry leaders approached me about consulting opportunities. Companies that had spent millions on visually impressive platforms were quietly seeking more practical approaches. Amanda appeared at my side during a conversation with the CTO of a major financial services firm. "Clara," she said with forced warmth, "what an interesting presentation. Very practical." The CTO excused himself, sensing tension. "Amanda," I replied calmly, "how are things at Cortex Labs?" "Challenging," she admitted, dropping some of her theatrical persona. "The market seems to be moving toward more utilitarian approaches, less appreciation for visionary thinking. Or maybe users are finally being heard over the noise of visionary thinking." She studied my face, perhaps recognizing for the first time that she was no longer dealing with the accommodating employee she had dismissed. "I hear NextCore is doing well with some of our former clients." "NextCore is doing well with clients who prioritize results over presentations." Amanda's smile became strained. "You know, Clara, there might be opportunities for collaboration. Your approach could complement our innovation initiatives." The offer was desperate and transparent. Cortex Labs needed practical solutions to stop their client hemorrhaging, and Amanda was willing to swallow her pride to access them. "I appreciate the offer, Amanda, but I'm committed to working with teams that value substance over style." She nodded slowly, understanding that this was not just a professional rejection, but a personal reckoning. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "your work at Cortex Labs was more valuable than I recognized at the time." It was as close to an apology as Amanda's ego would allow. "The work was always valuable," I replied. The question was whether anyone was willing to see past their preconceptions to recognize it. She walked away without another word, returning to her table of Cortex Labs colleagues who were undoubtedly discussing damage control strategies for their struggling platform. I spent the rest of the conference in conversations with companies seeking practical UX leadership. The industry was quietly experiencing a backlash against innovation theater, with executives recognizing that flashy interfaces couldn't compensate for poor usability. On the flight home, I reflected on the journey from that humiliating presentation in Cortex Labs' glass conference room to this moment of professional vindication. Amanda had been right about one thing. I did think differently than the neon world of UX innovation. But she had been wrong about the value of that difference. 6 months later, NextCore announced its acquisition of 3 major enterprise clients, including 2 that had previously been considered Cortex Labs' most secure relationships. The press release highlighted NextCore's user-centric approach to enterprise software design and quoted client testimonials about improved efficiency and user satisfaction. Amanda left Cortex Labs shortly afterward, accepting a position at a startup focused on experiential design for emerging technologies. The press announcement described her move as an opportunity to pursue more visionary initiatives in cutting-edge user experience domains. Translation: she had been pushed out of her leadership role after presiding over the company's largest client losses in its history. I learned about Amanda's departure through LinkedIn, where her network was posting congratulatory messages about her exciting new opportunity. The language was enthusiastic but hollow, the kind of professional cheerleading that happens when everyone understands the real story but maintains polite fiction. My own LinkedIn profile had become much busier, speaking requests, consulting inquiries, and job offers from companies seeking leaders who could deliver practical innovation rather than theoretical disruption. The message that meant the most came from a Meridian Logistics employee I had never met. "Hi, Clara. I'm a project manager at Meridian. I wanted to thank you for the workflow improvements you designed. My job used to involve hours of repetitive data entry and navigation between multiple screens. Now I can complete the same tasks in minutes, which means I can focus on actually analyzing the data instead of just collecting it. It's made my work genuinely more meaningful. Thank you for building something that actually helps people do their jobs better." Beige wallpaper in a neon world, indeed. I printed that message and framed it on my office wall at NextCore, next to user feedback from other clients who had discovered that the most radical innovation was often elegant simplification. The final validation came unexpectedly. Almost 2 years after my departure from Cortex Labs, Liam forwarded me an industry analysis report comparing enterprise UX platforms. The report highlighted NextCore as an emerging leader in practical user experience design and noted our significant competitive gains in markets previously dominated by more established players. Cortex Labs was mentioned as an example of companies struggling to balance innovative vision with user adoption challenges. The report's conclusion was particularly satisfying. The most successful UX strategies in enterprise software prioritize measurable user outcomes over aesthetic innovation. Companies that have embraced this practical approach are capturing market share from competitors who have prioritized form over function. I had become the poster child for an industry trend that Amanda had dismissed as unimaginative. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, looking through the project files that had started this entire journey. The original user research from Cortex Labs, the prototype specifications, the business impact projections that had been dismissed as beige thinking. Every prediction had been proven correct. Every user pain point I had identified had been validated by real-world usage data. Every efficiency gains I had projected had been exceeded in actual implementation. The work had always been valuable. The vision had always been sound. The only thing that had been wrong was the environment that couldn't recognize innovation disguised as practicality. I opened my laptop and began drafting a presentation proposal for the next UX strategy conference. Beyond Innovation Theater, building user experiences that actually work. If the industry was ready to move beyond neon wallpaper and embrace practical innovation, I was ready to lead that conversation. The last document I reviewed that night was my original Cortex Labs presentation. the one that had been dismissed in that glass conference room under Amanda's withering assessment. I scrolled through the slides, remembering the humiliation and self-doubt that had followed. But now I could see it differently. Not as a failure, but as a successful proof of concept that had been presented to the wrong audience. Amanda had been right about one thing. My mind did work differently than the neon world she inhabited. But what she had failed to understand was that different didn't mean inferior. Sometimes beige wallpaper is exactly what a room needs to become functional, comfortable, and genuinely livable. I closed the laptop and finished my wine, satisfied with the knowledge that the best revenge is not just success, but success that proves your critics fundamentally wrong about what matters. In the end, I hadn't just buried Amanda's career. I had buried an entire approach to user experience design that prioritized spectacle over substance. And I had done it with the exact same unimaginative thinking that she had dismissed as worthless. The irony was perfect, even if Amanda would never be able to appreciate it.